Essenes from Assa, a healer, a sect of Jews said by Pliny to have lived near the Dea Sea, the Dead Sea, Permilia Saeculorum, for thousands of ages. Some have supposed them to be extreme Pharisees, and others, which may be the true theory, the descendants of the Benim Nabim of the Bible, and think they were Kenites and Nazarites. They had many Buddhistic ideas and practices, and it is noteworthy that the priests of the great mother at Ephesus, Diana Bhavani, with many breasts, were also so denominated. Eusebius, and after him De Quincey, declared them to be the same as the early Christians, which is more than probable. The title brother used in the early church was Essenean. They were a fraternity, or a koinoboion, or community like the early converts, like the early converts. It is noticeable that only the Sadducees or Zadokites, the priest caste, and their partisans persecuted the Christians. The Pharisees were generally scholastic and mild, and often sided with the latter. James the Just was a Pharisee till his death, but Paul, or Aher, was esteemed a schismatic. Evolution, the development of higher orders of animals from the lower, modern or so-called exact science, holds but to a one-sided physical evolution, prudently avoiding and ignoring the higher or spiritual evolution, which would force our contemporaries to confess the superiority of the ancient philosophers and psychologists over themselves. The ancient sages, ascending to the unknowable, made their starting point from the first manifestation of the unseen, the unavoidable, and from a strict logical reasoning, the absolutely necessary creative being. The demiurgos of the universe. Evolution began with them from pure spirit, which, descending lower and lower down, assumed at last a visible and comprehensible form, and became matter. Arrived at this point, they speculated in the Darwinian method, but on a far more large and comprehensive basis. In the Rig Veda Samhita, the oldest book of the world, to which even our most prudent Indiologists and Sanskrit scholars assign an antiquity of between 2,000 and 3,000 years BC. In the first book, Hymns to the Maruts, it is said, "Not being and being are in the highest heaven, in the birthplace of Daksha, in the lap of Aditi, Mandala. In the first age of the gods, being, the comprehensible deity, was born from not being, whom no intellect can comprehend. After it were born the regions, the invisible, from them Uttanapada. From Uttanapad the earth was born. The regions, those that are visible, were born from the earth. Daksha was born of Aditi, and Aditi from Daksha. Aditi is the infinite, and Daksha is Daksha Pitara. Literally meaning the father of gods, but understood by Max Muller. And Ra to mean the fathers of strength, preserving, possessing, granting faculties. Therefore, it is easy to see that Daksha, born of Aditi, and Aditi from Daksha, means what the moderns understand by correlation of forces, the more so as we find in this passage, translated by Professor Mueller. I place Agni, the source of all beings, the father of strength, a clear and identical idea which prevailed so much in the doctrines of the Zoroastrians, the Magians, and the medieval fire philosophers. Agni is god of fire, of the spiritual ether, the very substance of the divine essence of the invisible God, present in every atom of his creation, and called by the Rosicrucians the celestial fire. If we only carefully compare your mother If we only carefully compare the verses from this mandala, one of which runs thus: the sky is your father, the earth your mother, Soma your brother, Aditi your sister, with the inscription on the Smaragdine tablet of Hermes, we will find the same substratum of metaphysical philosophy, the identical doctrines. As all things were produced by the mediation of one being, so all things were produced from this one thing by adaptation. Its father is the sun, its mother is the moon, separate from the earth, separate from the fire, the subtle from the gross. What I had to say about the operation of the sun is completed. Smaragdine tablet. Translated by Max Mueller, Professor of Comparative Philology at the Oxford University, England. Diyari Vapita Kritivi Mara Soma Bharata Aditi Swasa. Professor Max Mueller sees in this mandala at last something like a theogony, though full of contradictions. The alchemists, Kabbalists, and students of mystic philosophy will find therein a perfectly defined system of evolution in the cosmogony of a people who lived a score of thousands of years before our era. They will find in it, moreover, a perfect identity of thought and even doctrine with the Hermetic philosophy, and also that of Pythagoras and Plato. In evolution, as it is now beginning to be understood, there is supposed to be in all matter an impulse to take on a higher form. Oh, my bad, brother. It's like sometimes we have to in evolution, as it is now beginning to be understood, there is supposed to be in all matter an impulse to take on a higher form, a supposition clearly expressed by Manu and other Hindu philosophers at the highest antiquity. The philosopher's tree illustrates, in the case of the zinc solution, the controversy between the followers of this school and the emanationists may be briefly stated thus. The evolutionist stops all inquiry at the borders of the unknowable. The emanationist believes that nothing can be evolved, or as the word means, unwombed or born, except it has first been involved, thus indicating that life is from a spiritual potency above the whole. Fakirs. Religious devotees in East India. They are generally attached to Brahmanical pagodas and follow the laws of Manu. A strictly religious fakir will go absolutely naked, with the exception of a small piece of linen called dhoti around his loins. They wear their hair long, and it serves them as a pocket, as they stick in it various objects, such as a pipe, a small flute called vaguda, the sounds of which throw the serpents into a cataleptic torpor, and sometimes their bamboo stick, about 1 foot long, with the 7 mystical knots on it. This magical stick, or rather rod, the fakir receives from his guru on the day of his initiation, together with the 3 mantrams, which are communicated to him mouth to ear. No fakir will be seen without this powerful adjunct of his calling. It is, as they all claim, the divining rod, the cause of every occult phenomenon produced by them. Hold on 1 second. The Brahmanical fakir is, well, it's just, as the perfect identity of the philosophical and religious doctrines of antiquity will be fully treated upon in subsequent chapters. We limit our explanations for the present. Philostratus assures us, assures us that the Brahms, Rig Veda Anhita, Philostratus assures us that the Brahmins were able in his time to perform the most wonderful cures by merely pronouncing certain magical words. The Indian Brahmins carry a staff and a ring, by means of which they are able to do almost anything. Origenes states the same. Contra celsum. But if a strong mesmeric fluid, say projected from the eye, and without any other contact, is not added. Let me say this again. But if a strong mesmeric fluid, say projected from the eye, and without any other contact, is not added, no magical words would be efficacious. Entirely distinct from the Musalman Meccadent of India, also called fakirs in some parts of the British territory. Hermetist, from Hermes, the god of wisdom, known in Egypt, Syria, and Phoenicia as Thoth, Tat, Adad, Seth, and Sat-an, the latter not to be taken in the sense applied to it by Muslims and Christians, Muslims, and in Greece as Cadmus. The Kabbalists identify him with Adam Kadmon, the first manifestation of the divine power, and with Enoch. There were two Hermes. The elder was the Trismegistus, and the second an emanation or permutation of himself, the friend and instructor of Isis and Osiris. Hermes is the god of the priestly wisdom, like Messias. Hierophant, discloser of sacred learning. The old man, the chief of the adepts at the initiations, who explained the arcane knowledge to the neophytes, but bore this title. In Hebrew and Chaldaic, the term was Peter, or opener, discloser. Hence, the Pope, as the successor of the Hierophant of the ancient mysteries, sits in the pagan chair of Saint Peter. The vindictiveness of the Catholic Church toward the alchemists and to arcane and astronomical. Let me say this. The vindictiveness of the Catholic Church toward the alchemists and the vindictiveness of the Catholic Church toward the alchemists and to arcane and astronomical science is explained by the fact that such knowledge was the ancient prerogative of the Hierophant, or representative of Peter, who kept the myriad mysteries of life and death. Men like Bruno, Galileo, and Kepler, therefore even Cagliostro, trespassed on the preserves of the Church and were accordingly murdered. Every nation had its mysteries and hierophants. Even the Jews had their Peter, Tannaim, or Rabbin, like Hillel, Akiba. Was a friend of Aher, said to have been the Apostle Paul of Christian story. Both are depicted as having visited paradise. A hare took branches from the tree of knowledge, and so fell from the true religion, Jewish. Akiba came away in peace. Epistle to the Corinthians. And other famous Kabbalists who alone could impart the awful knowledge contained in the Merkaba. In India there was in ancient times one, and now there are several hierophants scattered about the country, attached to the principal pagodas, who are known as the Brahma Atmas. In Tibet, the chief hierophant is the Dalai, or Dalai Lama, of Lhasa. Among Christian nations, the Catholics alone have preserved this heathen custom in the person of their Pope, albeit they have sadly disfigured its majesty and the dignity of the sacred office. Initiates. In times of antiquity, those who had been initiated into the arcane knowledge taught by the hierophants of the mysteries, and in our modern days, those who have been initiated by the adepts of mystic lore into the mysterious knowledge, which, notwithstanding the lapse of ages, has yet a few real votaries on earth. Kabbalist from Kabbalah, an unwritten or oral tradition. The Kabbalist is a student of secret science, one who interprets the hidden meaning of the scriptures with the help of the symbolic Kabbalah, and explains the real one by these means. The Tanaim were the first Kabbalists among the Jews. They appeared at Jerusalem about the beginning of the 3rd century before the Christian era. The books of Ezekiel, Daniel, Enoch, and the Revelation of St. John are purely Kabbalistical. This secret doctrine is identical with that of the Chaldeans, and includes at the same time much of the Persian wisdom, or magic. Lamas, Buddhist monks belonging to the Lamaic religion of Tibet, as for instance, friars are the monks belonging to the Popish or Roman Catholic religion. Every Lama is subject to the Grand Dalai Lama, the Buddhist Pope of Tibet, who holds his residence at Lhasa, and is a reincarnation of Buddha, Mage or Magian, from Mag or Maha. The word is the root of the word magician, Mahatma, the great soul or spirit. And India had its priests in the pre-Vedic times. The Magians were priests of the fire god, Magians. We find them among the Assyrians and Babylonians, as well as among the Persian fire worshippers. The 3 Magi also denominated kings that are said to have made gifts of gold, incense, and myrrh to the infant Jesus, were fire worshippers like the rest, and astrologers, for they saw his star. The high priest of the Parsis at Surat is called Mobed. Others derived the word from Mehab, signifying something grand and noble. Zoroaster's disciples were called Megistom, according to Kaluker. Magician, this term, once a title of renown and distinction, has come to be wholly perverted from its true meaning. Once the synonym of all that was honorable and reverent, of a professor of learning and wisdom, it has become degraded into an epithet to designate one who is a pretender and a juggler, a charlatan, in short, or one who has sold his soul to the evil one, who misuses his knowledge and employs it for low and dangerous uses, according to the teachings of the clergy, and a mass of superstitious fools who believe the magician a sorcerer and an enchanter. But Christians forget apparently that Moses was also a magician, and Daniel, master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. The word magician, then, scientifically speaking, is derived from magma, Hindu or Sanskrit, maha, great, a man well versed in the secret or esoteric knowledge, properly a sacerdote. Manticism or mantic frenzy. During this state was developed the gift of prophecy. The two words are nearly synonymous. One was as honored as the other. Pythagoras and Plato held it in high esteem, and Socrates advised his disciples to study manticism. The church fathers, who condemned so severely the mantic frenzy in pagan priests and Pythiae, were not above applying it to their own uses. The Montanus, who took their name from Mount Montanus, a bishop of Phrygia, who was considered divinely inspired, rivaled with the Mantius, or prophets. Tertullian, Augustine, and the martyrs of Carthage were of the number, says the author of Prophecy, ancient and modern. The Montanus seem to have resembled the Bacchantes in the wild enthusiasm that characterized their orgies. Bacchantes. He adds, there is a diversity of opinion as to the origin of the word manticism. There was the famous Montis the seer in the days of Melampus and Protus, king of Argos, and there was prophecy. There was Monto, the daughter of the prophet of Thebes, herself a prophetess. Cicero describes prophecy. Describes prophecy and mantic frenzy by saying that in the inner recesses of the mind is divine prophecy hidden and confined, a divine impulse, which, when it burns more vividly, is called furor, frenzy, madness. But there is still another etymology possible for the word mantis, and to which we doubt if the attention of the philologist was ever drawn. The mantic frenzy may, perchance, have a still earlier origin. The two sacrificial cups of the Soma mystery, used during the religious rites, and generally known as grahas, are respectively called Sukra and Manti. Aitareya Brahmana. It is in the latter Manti or Manti cup that Brahma is said to be stirred up, while the initiate drinks, albeit sparingly, of the sacred soma juice. The Brahma, or rather his spirit, personified by the god Soma, enters into the man and takes possession of him. Hence, ecstatic vision, clairvoyance, and the gift of prophecy. Both kinds of divination, the natural and the artificial, are aroused by the Soma. The Sukra cup awakens that which is given to every man by nature. It unites both spirit and soul, and these, from their own nature and essence, which are divine, have a foreknowledge of future things as dreams, unexpected visions, and presentiments well prove. The contents of the other cup, the manti, which stirs the Brahma, put thereby the soul in communication, not with the highest divine essence itself. Let me say this again. The contents of the other... This is getting a little hard. Let me go like this. The contents of the other cup, the stirs the Brahma, put thereby the soul in communication, not only with the minor gods, the well-informed, but not omniscient spirits, but actually with the highest divine essence itself. The soul receives a direct illumination from the presence of its God. But as it is not allowed to remember certain things, well known only in heaven, the initiated person is generally seized with a kind of sacred frenzy, and upon recovering from it, only remembers that which is allowed to him. As to the other kind of seers and diviners, those who make a profession of and a living by it, they are usually held to be possessed by a Gandharva, a deity which is nowhere so little honored as in India. Mantra, a Sanskrit word conveying the same idea as the ineffable name. Some mantras, when pronounced according to magical formula taught in the Atharva Veda, produce an instantaneous and wonderful effect. In its general sense, though, a mantra is either simply a prayer to the gods and powers of heaven, as taught by the Brahmanical books, and especially Manu, or else a magical charm. In its esoteric sense, the word of the mantra, or mystic speech, is called by the Brahmins Vach. It resides in the mantra, which literally means those parts of the sacred books which are considered as the Suruti, or direct divine revelation. Marabut, a Mahometan pilgrim who has been to Mecca, a saint, after whose death his body is placed in an open sepulchre built on the surface, like other buildings, but in the middle of the streets and public places of populated cities, placed inside the small and only room of the tomb, and several such public sarcophagi of brick and mortar may be seen to this day in the streets and squares of Cairo. The devotion of the wayfarers keeps a lamp ever burning at his head. The tombs of some of these marabouts have a great fame for the miracles they are alleged to perform. Materialization, a word employed by spiritualists to indicate the phenomenon of spirit clothing itself with a material form. The far less objectionable term, form manifestation, has been recently suggested by Mr. Stainton Moses of London, when the real nature of these apparitions is better comprehended. A still more appropriate name will doubtless be adopted. To call them materialized spirits is inadmissible, for they are not spirits, but animated portrait statues. Mazdaeans, from Ahura Mazda, see Spiegel's Yasna. They were the ancient Persian nobles who worshipped Ormazd, and rejecting images inspired the Jews with the same horror for every concrete representation of the deity. They seem, in Herodotus' time, to have been superseded by the Magian religionists, the Parsis and Geberism. Mighty men of Genesis 6 and 10 appeared to be Magian religionists. By a curious muddling of ideas, Zoroaster, Zero, a circle, or a sun or priest, Aster, Ishtar, or Astarte, in Aryan dialect, a star, the title of the head of the Magians and fire worshippers, or Surya Ishtara, the sun worshipper, is often confounded in modern times with Zarathustra, and the reputed Mazdaean apostle, Zoroaster. Metempsychosis, the progress of the soul from one stage of existence to another, symbolized and vulgarly believed to be rebirths in animal bodies, a term generally misunderstood by every class of European and American society, including many scientists. The Kabbalistic axiom, a stone becomes a plant an animal a man a spirit, and a spirit a god, receives an explanation in Manu's Manava, Dharma Satra, and other Brahmanical books. Mysteries, Greek teletai, or finishings, as analogous to teluteia, or death. They were observances generally kept secret from the profane and uninitiated, in which were taught by dramatic representation and other methods. The origin of things, the nature of the human spirit, its relations to the body, and the method of its purification and restoration to higher life. Physical science, medicine, the laws of music, divination, were all taught in the same manner. The Hippocratic Oath was but a mystic obligation. Hippocrates was a priest of Asclepios, some of whose writings chanced to become public, but the Asclepiades were initiates of the Asclepian serpent worship, as the Bacchantes were of the Dionysia, and both rites were eventually incorporated with the Eleusiniae. We will treat of the mysteries fully in the subsequent chapters. Mystics, those initiated, but in the medieval and later periods, the term was applied to men like Bowman, the Theosophist, Molinos, the Quietist, Nicholas of Basel, and others who believed in a direct interior communion with God, analogous to the inspiration of the prophets. Nabia, seership, soothsaying, the oldest and most respected of mystic phenomena, is the name given to prophecy in the Bible, and is correctly included among the spiritual powers such as divination, clairvoyant visions, trance conditions, and oracles. But while enchanters, diviners, and even astrologers are strictly condemned in the Mosaic books, prophecy, seership, and nabia appear to the special gifts of heaven. In the early ages, they were all termed epoptai, the Greek word for seers, clairvoyants, after which they were designated as Nebim, the plural of Nebo, the Babylonian god of wisdom. The Kabbalist distinguishes between the seer and the magician. One is passive and the other is active. Nibiru is one who looks into futurity. And a clairvoyant. Nebi Poel, he who possesses magic powers. We notice that Elijah and Apollonius resorted to the same means to isolate themselves from the disturbing influences of the outer world, wrapping their heads entirely in a woolen mantle. From its being an electric non-conductor, we must suppose. Occultist, one who studies the various branches of occult science. The term is used by the French Kabbalists. See Eliphas Levi. Occultism embraces the whole range of psychological, physiological, cosmical, physical, and spiritual phenomena, from the word occult, hidden or secret, applying therefore to the study of the Kabbalah, astrology, alchemy, and all arcane sciences. Pagan gods. This term, gods, is erroneously understood by most of the reading public to mean idols. The idea attached to them is not that of something objective or anthropomorphical, with the exception of occasions when gods mean either divine, planetary entities, angels, or disembodied spirits of pure men. The term simply conveys to the mind of the mystic, whether Hindu, Hotar, Mazdaean mage, Egyptian hierophant, or disciple of the Greek philosophers, the idea of a visible or cognized manifestation of an invisible potency of nature, and such occult potencies are invoked under the appellation of various gods, who for the time being are personating these powers. Thus every one of the numberless deities of the Hindu, Greek, and Egyptian powers, pantheons, are simply powers of the unseen universe. When the officiating Brahmin invokes Aditya, who in her cosmic character is the goddess sun, he simply commands that potency personified in some god, which, as he asserts, resides in the mantra, as the sacred Vach. These god powers are allegorically regarded as the divine Hotars of the Supreme One, while the priest Brahman is the human Hotar who officiates on earth, and representing that particular power becomes ambassador-like, invested with the very potency which he personates. Pitris. It is generally believed that the Hindu term Pitris means the spirits of our direct ancestors or disembodied people. Hence the argument of some spiritualists that fakirs and other Eastern wonder workers are mediums. that they themselves confess to being unable to produce anything without the help of the Pitris, of whom they are the obedient instruments. This is, in more than one sense, erroneous. The Pitris are not the ancestors of the present living men, but those of the humankind, or Adamic race. The spirits of human races, which, on the great scale of descending evolution, preceded our races of men, and were physically as well as spiritually far superior to our modern pygmies. In Manava Dharma Satra, they are called the lunar ancestors. Last one. Pythia, or Pythonis. Webster dismisses the word very briefly by saying that it was the name of one who delivered the oracles at the Temple of Delphi, and any female supposed to have the spirit of divination in her, a witch, which is neither complimentary, exact, nor just. Pythia, upon the authority of Plutarch, Iamblichus, Lamprius, and others, was a nervous sensitive. She was chosen from among the poorest class, young and pure. Attached to the temple within those precincts, she had a room, secluded from every color, into which no one but the priest or seer had admittance. She had no communications with the outside world, and her life was more strict and ascetic than that of a Catholic nun, sitting on a tripod of brass placed over a fissure in the ground through which arose intoxicating vapors. These subterranean exhalations, penetrating her whole system, produced the prophetic mania. In this abnormal state, she delivered oracles. She was sometimes called ventriloqua vates, the ventriloquist prophetess. Pantheon myths. Aristophanes in Vostos. The ancients placed the astral soul of man, Suke, or his self-consciousness, in the pit of the stomach. The Brahmins shared this belief with Plato and other philosophers. Thus we find in the 4th verse of the 2nd Nabhanashadishta hymn, it is said, "Hear, O sons of the gods, one who speaks through his navel, for he hails you in your dwellings." Many of the Sanskrit scholars agree that this belief is one of the most ancient among the Hindus. The modern fakirs, as well as the ancient gymnosophists, unite themselves with their Atman and the deity by remaining motionless in contemplation and concentrating their whole thought on their navel. As in modern somnambulic phenomena, the navel was regarded as the circle of the sun, the seat of internal divine light. It is the fact of a number of modern somnambulists being enabled to read letters, hear, smell, and see through that part of their body to be regarded again as a simple coincidence, or shall we admit at last that the old sages knew something more of physiological and psychological mysteries than our modern academicians? In modern Persia, when a magician, often simply a mesmerizer, is consulted upon occasions of theft and other puzzling occurrences, he makes his manipulations over the pit of his stomach, and so brings himself into a state of clairvoyance. Among the modern Parsis, remarks a translator of the Rig Vedas, there exists a belief up to the present day that their adepts have a flame in their navel, which enlightens to them all darkness and discloses the spiritual world, as well as all things unseen or at a distance. They call it the lamp of the Deshtur, or high priest, the light of the Dikshita, the initiate, and otherwise designate it to many other names.